Thank you, Marisa, and welcome everyone. My name is Astrid Liden from the Minnesota Department of Education, and I'm the ABE Professional Development Specialist there. And we are so excited to have you join us today to learn about the teacher verification model. This has been something we've been spending a great deal of time on over the past several months, and we're really looking forward to unveiling this new process with all of you. I'll invite my co-presenters to turn on their cameras and say hello as well. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bennett. I teach at the Takoda GED and ABE program in Minneapolis.
Elizabeth, you want to say a little bit about your role in the project?
And I am the person who wrote most of modules 5 and 6 that you'll have to read to become TVM certified.
My name is Adam Kieffer. I'm a teacher at the Hub Center in St. Paul. I am on the state distance learning team. I'm a teacher at the Hub Center. I'm also on our our program's distance learning team. So I wear a couple different hats. And I was a collaborator with Astrid and Elizabeth and other people behind the scenes to kind of make this happen. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, and a huge thank you to Elizabeth and Adam, who have done the heavy lifting to get this process off the ground and develop a high quality certification course for you all to go through to start using this model. So thank you so much. And thanks to, I know that some of the folks who were part of our subcommittee working on this process are here with us today. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in this huge undertaking. So what are our objectives today? Our goal today is that you are going to walk away with the information you need to decide whether the TVM might be something you could use in your program, and then know what steps you need to take to move forward with that. So we hope that by the end of this session, you'll understand why the TVM was created, articulate how you might be able to use that and what types of lessons can be used to generate proxy hours. We'll be looking at some examples. That you'll understand the steps you need to take to get TVM certified and access the training you need, and then start to consider how you might be able to use this process in your own program. So let's go to the next slide. Let's start with the what. So what is the teacher verification model? This is a new pathway that we have developed for Minnesota ABE teachers and programs to be able to count distance proxy hours for asynchronous lessons, so lessons where the teacher and the learner are not engaging with each other at the same time, that have been verified by a TVM certified teacher. So we're going to talk through the process today of how a teacher becomes certified to use this model, and what are the steps that will take place to verify that the lesson has been completed. And now let's look at the why, the rationale for the development of this new model. So this really has grown out of work that's already being done in the field, and a call from teachers and programs around the state to have some of the work that they are already doing count for proxy hours. We know that there is innovative and high quality asynchronous instruction already happening. And we wanted to find a way to allow programs to count that work that the teacher and the learners are putting a lot of time into, to have that count for proxy hours. So with this new model, they'll be able to collect proxy hours for instruction and activities that are asynchronous, but that are not part of an already approved distance learning platform or course. So some examples of what that might look like are out of class assignments that are being used to support the synchronous instruction. So you have a Zoom class, and then you send your learners out to do some activities on your class website. Or teacher created videos and activities for independent learning and practice. So you've designed some videos to support your learners with fractions practice and a further instruction. Or lessons delivered through paper packets. That was a really important feature as we were developing this model, was to design something that could be used both with online learning materials as well as paper-based learning materials. We know that in some cases, learners are not able to access materials in an online format for a variety of reasons. And so we wanted this to be flexible. So let's go to the next slide, Adam. So to recap, now there are 3 options in Minnesota for earning distance learning proxy hours. The first 2 have been on pause and we are reopening them today. So proxy hours can be earned by using one of the many over 40 distance learning platforms for use here in Minnesota. They can also be earned by having students complete work in a teacher-created course that has been approved. And then finally, through this new model, earn proxy hours by completing teacher-verified asynchronous lessons. So Adam, do you want to go into this flow chart, the larger version of that, just so people can see what this looks like and how it can be used to help them make decisions about which pathway to use? So as you follow this flow chart, you can see, you'll think about what kind of content that you're seeking approval for. Is it a published resource? If so, that would be the DL platform approval form. If it's something that's been created by you or your program, then you have another decision point here. Is it a complete course that is at least 20 hours of instruction and has a syllabus and a defined start and end time? If so, you can use either the time on task or unit completion model to get your teacher created course approved. If it's just an individual lessons that is part of an ongoing set of instruction, then it will potentially be used through the teacher verification model. So as Adam will outline later, there are some very specific guidelines to be followed when using a teacher verified model. If your lesson fits those guidelines, then, and you are a teacher, you are a TVM certified teacher, then you will complete the submission form and can earn proxy hours. If not, you can still use that lesson, but it is not eligible for proxy hours. So I see that the link to find this flowchart is in the chat. This is on the distance learning website, which will provide links to all of the resources you need at the end of this process, at the end of this presentation. So you can take a look at that and use it as you're making decisions about which model you might want to use. So at this point, let me just pause and ask Elizabeth and Adam if there are any clarifying questions we need to take at this point in the chat.
Sarah asked a question. It's not clear to me what M State is, but maybe her question is this something we could use with our collaborations with M State? I'm guessing Metro State. Many of these courses are asynchronous, but we are still collaborating with them. Or is this strictly for our lessons within our adult education setting?
Good question. So I think she's referring to Minnesota State universities and campuses. So these are lessons that could be used in a variety of contexts, but they are designed to collect proxy hours for ABE eligible students. So if you have ABE eligible students that you are serving in that collaboration, then yes, this model could potentially be used through those collaborations.
Thanks, Astrid.
So I'm going to ask everybody just to reflect for a minute on what you see as some of the potential benefits of this model. Why might you want to use this? Why do you think this could be a good thing for our system in Minnesota adult education? Just take a minute and chat in some of what you're thinking right now. Mike says they have a lot of students who want to continue distance learning. Yes, I know that many programs and hopefully all programs are thinking about, even beyond the pandemic, how you are going to continue to provide distance learning options for your learners. And this will provide you a way to earn proxy hours for some of that asynchronous instruction. And Mag talks about the credit recovery courses that her students complete at home. And she's talking about variety of lessons.
Somebody chimed in,
limited.
this will be vital for corrections.
Absolutely. We know that our colleagues in corrections have faced a lot of barriers in being able to interact with their students as well as have their learners access materials online. So I know that they are looking forward to using this process.
Potential to reduce class size.
Yes, with some students learning at home, some learning in person. Tammy says taking the curriculum they are using and creating and putting it in a shareable format for colleagues. We're definitely seeing that as a benefit of this as well. Potential for new students to catch up. Yes, we know that our learners come and go and have lots of reasons why they may not be able to attend class in person, and this would be a way for them to complete lessons that they missed.
Yeah, and earn hours finally for
Yes.
if the teachers put in the work to make that a possibility.
Right. Kelly's mentioning that this could be beneficial for some of their career pathway programming. And Jess says their citizenship programming. Great. Well, thank you for chatting in. Adam, let's go to the next slide. I'll call out just Sarah's comment, one last comment. Great for us smaller programs that have limited hours in the building. Yes, this is a great potential way to continue providing additional instruction to your learners so that they can increase their intensity of instruction and practice and meet their learning goals more quickly. So I think a lot of what we saw, some of the benefits are ones that you mentioned in the chat. So really, and we see it as a way to support a blended learning model where students are having a combination of real-time and asynchronous learning experiences that really helps to accelerate and intensify their learning goals. And a variety of benefits related to creating and sharing materials among teachers across the state and teachers in a given program. And I think importantly, it recognizes and encourages some of the really innovative work that you all have been doing this year. We know that I've heard throughout the day from instructors what a heavy lift this has been and the many hours that people have put into creating really excellent lessons for their learners. So we're excited to be able to provide a pathway for counting proxy hours for some of those. So let's go to the next slide, Adam. So before we move into getting into the details of how certification works and what lessons are possible to use with the teacher verification model, just a couple of things we really want to emphasize and have you keep in mind. The first is that this is a pilot. This is an entirely new process, and we've spent quite a bit of time researching how this is being approached in other states. And I think the model that we've come up with is fairly unique. And we're in a unique situation in Minnesota where student contact hours are such a large portion of our funding for programs. So as we work out the details, we appreciate your patience and flexibility. We know that questions are going to come up that we probably haven't anticipated, and we're relying on you and your real life experience using this model to provide feedback to us about what's working and what's not working, and over time help us refine this model so that it provides high quality lessons for learners and accountability and is manageable for folks out in programs to use. There is an evaluation in the online distance and blended learning course and the TVM module where you will have a chance to provide feedback. And then there is also the distance learning Zendesk support email that we'll give you at the end of this presentation where you can share thoughts and ideas for improving the process. And then I also want to make sure that everybody understands that the use of the teacher verification model is optional. This will be a great fit for some programs who are already doing asynchronous lessons or feel like that is something that is a good use of their teacher time and will support their learners, but there's no pressure to do so. And it's really intended to help those who are already doing this kind of work count hours for that excellent instruction that's already happening. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Adam to talk through the process teachers will need to go through to get certified to use the teacher verification model.
All right, thank you, Astrid. So this is a graphic that Elizabeth made, and it just outlines the steps. So first I'm just going to talk through it, and then I'll show you another slide, which I'll talk through in a little bit more detail. But the first step is, actually I'm going to just go to the next slide because it's the font's a little bit bigger. But step by step, I'll just take you through it, okay? So the first step we're requiring for everyone is what we're calling a distance learning basics training. So that means at some point you completed the old or prior or previous version, we called it this DL Basics Online, or you participated in Distance Learning 101 at some point, okay? Or you can complete this DL Basics training by doing modules 1 through 5 of the new Distance and Blended Learning Basics for Minnesota Adult Education online course. I will take you out to that in a little bit, but let me just go through the steps first. So that's the first prerequisite, is that you have some sort of DL Basics training. We are encouraging people, even if they've done the old DL Basics course, even in the past year or 2 years, to consider, and we're highly recommending that you enroll and go through the new one, because it's been totally revamped, it's up to date, and it's good. It's good stuff. Step 2 is to complete the Minnesota specific modules of the Distance and Blended Learning course. So again, there's 6 modules total in this course. DL Basics is module 1 through 5. Even if you've done the old DL Basics or DL 101, you still have to complete module 5. Okay, so basically what we're saying is everybody has to complete module 1 through 5 if you want to be TVM certified. So module 5, which is called MNABE, Distance Education Policy and Procedures. And module 6, which is called TVM in Practice in the online course. Alicia, yeah, I see your question. So modules 1 through 5 are each worth 1 CEU. And then module 6, TVM in Practice, is worth 3 CEUs because there's some accompanying extra work that is required, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So if you were to complete the entire, all 6 modules of the Distance and Blended Learning Basics course, you would earn 8 CEUs. If you just completed module 5 and 6, you would earn 4 CEUs. Part of completing module 6, TVM in Practice, will be submitting an example or practice TVM lesson and your supporting materials, and passing the quiz at the end of the module with a 100% score. But don't worry, you can retake the quiz, and you can even adjust your answers within the quiz. So that is sort of step 3, but it's kind of step 2.5. So module 6 is worth 3 CEUs because it's a little bit more work. Step 4 is you participate in a TVM certification webinar. We have not had any of these yet because we're literally introducing it right now. There are 2 that are on the Atlas PD calendar, March 31st and April 29th. You can get the link to register for that only if you go to the course and enroll and complete module 6, TVM in Practice. Okay, more will be scheduled in the future, as Astrid just chatted, but these are the first 2 we wanted to get on the calendar for those who are eager to enroll in this new PD. The 5th step is that after you complete the webinar, and not before, so you'll get the 3 CEUs for completing, or 4 CEUs potentially for completing 5 and 6. And then you'll get another CEU, which will be 1.5 CEUs, which will also be a certification, TVM certification. So you'll get those kind of in combo or in tandem, okay? Then sort of a 5.5 step is there's a place in SID, and there will be more PD on this in the coming weeks and months about using SID to track some of your PD experiences. And but one thing that you will be able to do is select TVM certification under your staff history in SID. We're not going to go into detail on that right now, but it's a cool feature in SID that you'll be learning more about in the future. So you can share that with your program manager, and then they'll have rights in SID to change your staff history or make that edit or addition to your staff history. And the final step is not even really a step. It's just your TVM certified now. So now you can use the process. You've learned about it. You've had a webinar where we're discussing the process with other people. You can start assigning TVM lessons and collecting proxy hours for your students' completed TVM lesson work. So it feels like a lot as I'm looking at this on the screen, but I think that you'll find it's very manageable, and and you'll find your way through it. You'll navigate your way through it. I feel like we should pause just for a second for some questions. Not too much. There might be a lot of questions about this, but one or two, if something's really burning, why don't you chat in a quick question and we'll see if we can tackle it real quick. Can TVM lessons be posted on any platform? Susan asks. I would say yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Do we need to use the submission form for each lesson? Yes. More about that in a minute. Astrid, Elizabeth, do you think this is a good time to just briefly show people the course? Or should we wait a little bit further on?
I think we can take a look at the course now.
Yep.
Quickly, Adam asks, do steps 1 through 4 have to be done in order? Can the webinar be attended prior to step 2? No, good question. Thanks for asking. So you got to complete the modules first, upload your lesson, pass the quiz, register for the webinar, do the webinar, then you'll get your certification. Karen says I think it would be a good strategy to have all my staff do DL Basics 1 through 5 now. I agree with you, Karen. I think that will be a strategy that hopefully many managers will employ. We're getting a cohort of staff enrolled in the new course and working towards TVM certification. Okay, we're getting into the weeds a little bit. These are all good questions, but I'm just going to go out real quick just for a minute. So if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, this is what the Literacy Minnesota Moodle course looks like. There's the course, Distance and Blended Learning for Basics. If you come to this site, you'll get a little preview. It will prompt you to either log in or create a new account. The account is free. It takes you 2 minutes to create. I'm going to log in here, and I'm going to view the student, view it as a student real quick. And this is what the course looks like. You've got an introduction. All the questions that you are asking are here. All the explanation I did about the requirements are here. Here's an introduction, a reflection document you'll need to complete, module 1, 2, and you can see each module is separated out by topic. So again, this is just a quick overview. We're not going to spend too much time here, but I just wanted to show it to you because that helps to see. And then here we are in module 5, which will be required to be TVM certified, Distance Education Policy and Procedures, and then module 6, TVM in Practice right here. There's the quiz, there's the lesson submission, and in here, there's a link to register for those webinar dates that I showed you. You can see I did not pass the quiz. And then you'll get checklists as you go through each thing. Okay, there's the course evaluation we told you about earlier, where we're really like to hear your feedback. So that is a quick overview of the new course and the modules within the course.
And Adam, I think some of the questions that are coming in now will probably be answered through some of the material that's coming up in the presentation. So maybe we'll hold off at this time.
That's great.
And let us get through the submission information and then read it.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth, right?
Yes, hi. So I get to talk to you about some of the more nuts and bolts aspects of this process. Once you get certified, what are you actually going to be doing as a teacher? So when you want to assign asynchronous lessons to your learners, you're going to submit details about each of your lessons to the DL team through it truly is short and easy, Google form. And we'll look at the Google form in a second. And then once your learners complete the lesson, you need to actually verify that they completed it. That's the verification piece of the model. And you need to provide them feedback. The feedback can take many different forms. Maybe you have a conference with them, either in person or over the phone. Maybe you give them written comments on their work. You give them a grade or a score in your learning management system. Whatever works with the systems you already have in place. And then you're going to record your learners' proxy hours for those lessons in SID. So we have a screenshot of the lesson submission form on the next slide, but maybe Adam, you want to actually go to the form and show them what it looks like? So it's a lot of text up front, but part of Module 6 is reading all that text, so it'll all be familiar to you. Basically, you're just agreeing that what you're submitting meets those guidelines that you've learned about in the course. And the what you're actually submitting for the course is pretty minimal, basically just your contact information and the lesson title, a little bit about the content of your lesson. If you're choosing to use publisher created materials, which is fine, or it's also fine not to. And then how many proxy hours are your learners going to earn from this lesson? So it seems like a lot, but we've tried really hard to make it manageable for teachers.
Just to be clear, you do not have to check all of these things. You're the only data entry points are down here. This is just a refresher of what you'll be going over in the course.
Mm-hmm. And then for the actual recording of the hours, we have a downloadable TVM lesson log that will be available soon in SID. Each class that you teach in SID will have a link to a TVM lesson log. And the nice thing about that is it already has your learners' names and SID ID numbers in the form for you. If you want to go to the next slide, that form will be available both as a PDF or as an Excel spreadsheet for you to enter your information. And then on the next slide, I just have a little mock-up of what it might look like. So you can see there's a row for each student in your class, and then a column for each lesson that you assign. And then for each lesson, you're responsible for noting the date that the learner completed it and the hours that they earned. And every learner who completes the same lesson will earn the same amount of proxy hours. There's no half credit. Either they did it or they didn't. And then you'll total the hours for the week or whatever time period, and then enter those hours into SID. We recommend doing it weekly, but as with other DL hours, you'll just follow the procedures that your program already has in place. And then let's, go to the next slide. And so talk about what actually counts as a TVM lesson. And the answer is there are so many possibilities. This is a really, really flexible process, and we want it to work for you. The whole point of this is to be able to give you credit for what you are already doing. You are already modifying and developing content that fits your learners and your specific teaching context. Really, the big thing we're concerned about is that we want these lessons to include some element of instruction, practice, and assessment, right? So this is not just grabbing some random photocopies of worksheets out of the file cabinet and handing it to someone. It needs to be part of a larger instructional context. So you could also just use the photocopies of the worksheets as long as you are documenting how that is part of a larger context. So maybe you have some worksheets that you want your learners to complete as pre-work or post-work from something that you're doing in a synchronous class session. And that is fine as long as you have a clear plan and there's connection between the activities and you're actually able to verify that learners have done the work and provide them with feedback. And the lessons can be online in a digital format, they can be all paper-based, or it can be a combination. So on the next slide, I actually have an example of a paper packet, and this example is in Module 6. So when you take the course, you'll be able to look at it more closely. But this is a paper packet with some worksheets that the teacher had modified, and then she provided a self-reflection page as sort of an assessment, and the work goes right along with what she's teaching in her synchronous class. The next example is from a class website. So we know a lot of teachers have been putting activities for their learners on websites. So this is a great way to let you finally get some proxy hour credit for that. Again, these are activities that learners would complete independently and asynchronously, but they're directly tied to classroom instruction. And then the third example I have here is in Google Classroom. And this is an example of a complete lesson that learners might complete asynchronously just for some independent practice. Somebody wants to get in some more time with some more or work on social studies content in conjunction with their reading class, say. So this is a complete lesson that includes like pre and post reading activities, video with some questions that the teacher created using Edpuzzle, a text to read, and a quiz on the text. So this would be an example that would be worth more proxy hours perhaps than the first two examples. And again, that's another piece of the flexibility here. You could do very short activities, or you could build out a more extensive lesson that would take several hours for your learners to complete. Let's talk a little bit about what does not count as a TVM lesson.
Elizabeth, real quick, there's a great question that came in. Just a question about if they're submitting something as a lesson and the students do part of it, can we get part of the assigned hours, or is it better to break things into smaller lessons?
So that's going to be up to you. And I haven't really fully answered this question for myself yet. I think there's going to be a period of trial and error where I figure out exactly how I want to chunk my asynchronous assignments. The short answer is if you want to get any proxy hours at all, they have to complete the whole thing. So I'll be figuring it out in my context, and you'll probably have to figure it out in yours as well.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah. So a little bit what I mentioned before, activities that are just assigned in isolation and without a broader instructional context are not what you should be submitting as TVM lessons. So we don't just want to be pulling something out of the file cabinet and handing it to someone without like thinking through how does this fit in with other instruction that they're receiving. We also don't want to just tell someone watch this video or do this really cool online activity and not have any way to check that they actually completed it and learned something from it. And I also wanted to clarify that all teachers can collaborate to develop TVM lessons, but only TVM certified teachers can submit them through that official Google form. all teachers can assign TVM lessons to their learners, and lessons could be developed by you, or they could be developed by another teacher in your program, but only someone who is TVM certified can generate proxy hours for those lessons. So if I am TVM certified and one of my colleagues at my program wants to assign a lesson that I've developed to her students, that's perfectly fine. But she can't collect proxy hours for those lessons until she becomes TVM certified herself. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, let's pause here for just a minute and make sure we catch up on some of the questions that have come in. So I think that the last point that you just shared, Elizabeth, about who can actually count the TVM hours is helpful to respond to one of the questions that came in earlier about whether volunteers should go through the course. So really anyone who in your program who is going to be developing TVM lessons and counting contact hours would need to go through this course to become certified to do so. If you have volunteers who are not part of that process, we would, and they're engaged in distance learning, I think modules 1 through 5 would be very beneficial. Module 6, probably not as relevant if they're not going to be part of that process. Would you agree, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Yeah, module 6 is very teacher focused.
Yeah. I also want to emphasize something to make sure people are understanding at this point, that the TVM process is used to certify teachers, not to approve particular lessons. So when you are filling out that submission form, you are submitting a record of a lesson being taught, but you are not actually submitting the lesson for approval. If you are certified and you are completing that checklist and agreeing that your lesson follows all of those guidelines, we are not reviewing every lesson. You are not submitting your lesson materials. We do have a plan to be doing some quality control and spot checking and follow up with folks who are using the TVM, but you're not having your individual lessons approved. And therefore, Amy, your question about TVM lessons being shared somewhere, at this point, there is not a plan in place to do that because we're not collecting them centrally. Perhaps down the future, if there are some really excellent lessons, we can look at developing some sort of lesson repository.
But Amy, on that point, if you and eventually some of your colleagues who you may collaborate with already on instructional content and lesson and materials, if they're TVM certified, you can use their TVM lessons and they can use yours, and you can both collect proxy hours for them. So the reason for this is we really want people to jump into the PD, understand the process, and we can go through the webinar so we can all be on the same page with this. It's the very reason we have the PD. So it's a great question, and encourage your colleagues to get TVM certified.
I want to go back to another question that was asked about submitting whole courses or for the TVM, and just wanted to clarify again that if you are developing a complete course, then you're going to want to go through the teacher developed course approval process. This is really designed for those of you who are delivering instruction that does not have a start and end time, that is not a complete course with a syllabus and scope and sequence per se, that you may be adjusting your instruction over time and developing lessons in an ongoing way, a way to get use those for proxy hours. Adam and Elizabeth, what else has come in that we should respond to?
Karen, yes, I like this comment. That is what we are saying. We are certifying the teachers and not certifying the individual lessons. In the case of an audit scenario, you would need to be able to provide your lesson plans and materials and explain why your learners earned 3 hours for this activity that you created. But normally, no, you just submit the lesson title and how many proxy hours through this form, and that's really all there is to it.
We have some more questions. What if you have shared students? Can the TVM certified instructor count it? And if a program manager is certified in TVM, could they host the TVM lesson class in SID and count them?
Well, again, that's the same, another version of the same question. A manager cannot sit in place of another teacher or multiple teachers. The TVM class in SID is just a place to record your proxy hours. It's not a blanket TVM certification. So any person who counts any proxy hours for their TVM lessons, that person has to be certified and go through the process.
Yeah, think about who the teacher of record is. Who is the teacher who is assigning the lesson? That person needs to be TVM certified in order for the lesson, for the hours to be counted as proxy hours. Abby asks, when we report the hours, will we need to have a record of which lesson they completed? Is there a place to do this in SID? You'll be keeping a separate record using the lesson log or another tracking system where you can keep track of the particular student, the lesson name, the number of proxy hours that lesson is worth, and the date when the lesson was turned in. And then in SID, you'll be entering the hours similar to the way you do for a distance learning platform, where you can bundle those hours and enter them into SID. Adam, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think her question might be, what do we do with the materials? So again, we're not planning to look at any materials, but you're saying when you are going through the PD and the webinar, you're saying I'm agreeing to have those materials available in the case that we were to do any sort of spot checking or audit. So it's just really what we want people to be, is digitally organized. I mean, that's the kind of the end goal. Keep your stuff organized and you'll be good. But you're not submitting any lessons, lesson plans, materials, just submitting basic lesson details.
Yeah.
In that form we showed you earlier.
And then Jenny brings up a really important point that what you do need to also keep on file, not in SID, is that lesson log where you're tracking the particular lessons, which students are completing them, what date they're turning them in. You can keep it on paper, you can scan it and keep it electronically, but that's what we would be looking for in the case of an audit, where we need to verify that the work was actually completed.
A lot of what we're talking about right now is detailed very explicitly and thoroughly in the course. So we might need to move along soon to get through all our stuff here, but Jennifer, maybe one last question. Do we need the log of the actual student work? Like Jennifer, if you're asking, do we need to keep the actual student work? I would say the answer is no. Okay, questions are coming in. We will keep this chat log. We will save it and try to maybe take another break to answer some questions.
Yeah.
Should we keep moving here? Or do you
Sure,
want
let's
to
keep
another one?
moving, and then we can come back to additional questions later.
Okay.
Okay, so another helpful thing to think about is, how does this possibly fit in with what you are already doing? Because we know teachers have already been developing a lot of really great asynchronous lessons and activities for their students. So if you would please share in the chat, what asynchronous instruction and activities are you already offering that might fit really well in this model? Oh, Angela, nice example with Flipgrid. Yeah, my students built human cells and had to describe all of the parts and their function by making a video. That's a great, great learning activity, and now you can get credit for it. Paula says a final project for a diploma competency. Darcy is using Edpuzzle and Flipgrid. Yes. Mag says, yep, GED prep on paper. Yes. Oh, the TEAS test for future nurses. Viewing an assigned TED Talk and completing an analysis worksheet. Wonderful, yeah. Jessica says a student watched a YouTube video for listening comprehension and then answered comprehension questions in Google Classroom. Great. Susan records daily live instructional videos for her students. Christine uses tons of Google Classroom assignments. A lot of citizenship practice outside of class. Yeah, Anna, I think that could definitely count for TVM hours. Tammy uses Google Classroom to send pre-reading videos and activities to do with her students. Yes. All sorts of activities for flipped classroom model. Yes, thank you, Angela. Abby is using correspondence by paper. Yes, in a corrections setting, definitely. That is designed to help you with that. Carolyn says preparation specifically for the extended response of the GED, I assume, and evidence-based writing.
What I see in the chat is lots of light bulbs going on in people's.
Yeah.
They're saying, I'm already doing this.
Yes.
I've been doing this for a long time, or I've been doing this since the pandemic hit. And that's right. Those are the light bulbs that we're hoping you are having. So thank you for this feedback here. Keep them coming if you like.
Yeah. Kathy uses a site called Kia where students take quizzes. Yes. Light bulb emoji. I love it. Kahoot activities. There's a lot of good stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers. Someone said something about ventures. Yeah, so ventures level 1 lessons and then doing activities on Zoom synchronously. Sure.
These are all awesome examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys got it. Somebody chatted to me personally about, hey, what if we all did this as a program on our PD days in the fall or whatever? I think that's a wonderful idea. You could build it into your time, or you could, there's many ways that managers and programs could incentivize people and encourage people to participate in this PD. All right, guys, I think we should move on. Is that okay, Elizabeth?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, before we move on, I want to call attention to Amy's comment, which I think is an important one, that teachers will need to really exercise caution around copyright issues as they are creating packets. And I believe in the new teacher developed courses course that Susan and Kathy Grady developed, which is hosted on the Moodle site along with the Distance Learning Basics course, there is some great information about how to follow copyright law.
Astrid, can you read out Lisa's question? Because I think it's a good one, worth taking a moment. We can't get hours for anything done in the past year though, right? This is only for the future?
Yes, that is correct. Only for the future.
Yeah. Think of it as a bonus.
Just a reminder to everybody that over the past year, the contact hours that we've been documenting are not being used to generate your funding for the coming year. We're going to be reusing the 1920 hours for generating the funding for the coming year.
Good. Yeah, I think the copyright issue will always be a nagging issue in education, and we just got to do our due diligence and on that topic. Susan, in the session I was in before this one, had several slides about that. Their session was about teacher created courses and the potential for copyright issues. If you're interested in that, you can check out, these are all being recorded, and I'm guessing they'll be put on the Minnesota ABE PD YouTube channel next week. So check out that recording if you weren't in her session. Lots of good tips and resources for that. Okay, should we move on to the quiz?
Let's do it.
Okay, got a quiz for you guys. We're going to ask you to chat in your answer. All right. So question 1, got 4 questions for you. I'm going to read it to you. The first one's short, the other ones are a little bit longer. Okay. So true or false? Anyone in Minnesota ABE can become TVM certified. All right. We got 112 people on this meeting, so the chat is flying. So our take on this is that it's true. Now, would everybody want to or necessarily need to think? We're thinking maybe that volunteer who's at your program 5 days a week, they're probably not assigning instructional content, right? Or the support person who is mostly works with intake and data, they might want to take the module just to know what it's all about, but they may not want to complete the whole process. So it's open to everyone, but not everybody would necessarily need to complete everything.
Adam, can I jump in to respond to a question that came in earlier that I think relates to this? Bergen had asked about their volunteer-led classes and whether proxy hours could be counted for TVM lessons with those. So in that case, if you do have programming where the volunteer is the instructor who is designing the lesson, assigning the lesson, providing feedback, in that case, yes, the volunteer would need to become certified in order to count proxy hours. But if the volunteer is just there in a supportive capacity in your program, not designing, developing, assigning, or grading the lessons, then they would not need to become TVM certified.
Thanks, Astrid. A question came in through the chat as things were flying by about, as people were just sharing kind of ideas in our response to our previous question about what do you think the previous, here, let me go back to the slide real quick. This slide, one of the responses was watch a video. And it went by, but this person was bothered by that because they said, we said, don't just watch a video, right? So I think the idea is watch a video is okay, but then have some sort of assessment, right? A quiz, a wraparound activity, that would be the piece that would provide some assessment, practice, additional pre-video watching, pre-teaching vocabulary, something like that, where there's a wraparound. It's not literally just watching a video. And there would almost be no way to track that anyway, unless it was built into an LMS and there were some other piece to it. So yeah, I mean, we give you a lot of examples of nitty-gritty stuff like that we don't want to dig in too deep right now. But in the course, we kind of dig deep on some of these issues. So Milo asked about finishing a partial lesson. So just like distance learning unit completion, if they were in a course, or we are suggesting that people do not only suggesting, we're saying people cannot give partial credit. So if the lesson is 30 minutes and they completed half of it, you cannot give them 15 minutes. All right, let's move on to question 2. I'm going to read this scenario to you. Are these all the choices? Which of these is not a step in the TVM process? Complete modules 5 and 6 in the Distance and Blended Learning Basics for Minnesota Adult Ed online course. Submit, upload a practice TVM lesson and materials in the course in module 6. Participate in the TVM certification webinar. Or submit, upload every TVM lesson plan and all your materials you use with learners to the TVM lesson checklist and submission form. Answers are coming in. Got it, you guys were paying attention, very good. Correct answer is what you were saying, D. Teachers do not have to submit or upload lesson plans or materials to the form. The form only asks for lesson details and lesson author info, name, email, what consortium, what program you work on, the title of the lesson. So after you're certified, you're good to go to submit to that form and create and use TVM lessons as much or as little as you'd like. But it is one submission per lesson. So how you chunk out your lesson, small, medium, or large, will be left up to you to decide how to do that. Okay, very good. Question 3. Vang is a student who has only completed part of his TVM lesson assignment on dividing fractions on his own, feels stuck, and comes to see a tutor at your ABE program for help. The tutor proceeds to give him an impromptu additional instruction and some practice for 30 minutes, using additional examples which are not part of the TVM lesson assignment. Vang leaves feeling more confident and is able to complete the rest of the TVM lesson assignment on his own. Question, true or false? Vang's teacher can collect proxy hours for Vang's completed TVM lesson, and the program can collect 30 minutes of contact time for the tutor's face-to-face time with him. Answers are rolling in. All right. It's true. It's true. This is something we dive in a little bit more into detail on in the module in the course. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but it sort of makes sense, right? The student completed the work independently. The tutor gave them additional instruction. They didn't complete it together. There would be no potential overlap in this particular case for double counting the hours. So yes, they could both collect the TVM proxy hours, and however the program, whatever the program system is for collecting tutor time, face-to-face time, whatever that system is, that can still continue in this case. All right, last question, guys. You are TVM certified, but your colleague Jane, who teaches the same class as you, is not. On your Google Classroom, you've created a great online TVM lesson with lots of cool activities on using infinitives and gerunds for students to work on over spring break. Since you frequently collaborate on lessons and instruction, Jane asks if she can also assign her students to work on the online TVM lesson activities. You say sure and send her the link to give to her students. Question, is it okay for Jane to have her students work on your online TVM lesson? All right, I see them coming in. Good, correct answer is yes. Bonus and more important question, is it okay for Jane to collect proxy hours for her students who completed the TVM lesson activities? Right on, here they come. I see your nose. No, Jane's not TVM certified. Ouch, sorry, Jane. Sign up for the course. You and your colleague can be on the same page, start collecting proxy hours for those lessons. All right, you guys got them all right. You aced the quiz, I would say. Okay, we have built in, we went through our slides pretty quick. We're at 3:15, so we do have some time. Nessia says, don't be Jane. That's hilarious. Let's get to some questions. There were a couple that came in. Astrid and Elizabeth, did you guys see anything that jumped out to the top for you?
Just back to that, can a volunteer or a teacher who is a teacher in your ABE program but perhaps doesn't have a K-12 teaching license become TVM certified? We're saying that yes, they can if they want to.
Yes, they can, but
Yeah.
the same, you just need to adhere to the rules in your program about who can deliver instruction, right? So in many of our programs in Minnesota are run through school districts, and in school districts, typically you have the licensed teacher delivering the instruction. We also have other programs, nonprofits and CBOs that do not need to have a certified teacher. So you would follow the same guidelines that you always follow as to who can collect contact hours or not, in determining who might be able to also use the TVM process.
Amy chatted a really good question. I'm just going to read it to you guys. If the tutor, in the case of question 4 or question 3, if the tutor was helping Bang with the TVM tasks, we would not count the seat time, just as we don't count seat time if a student uses Khan Academy on site, correct? And that is right, that is correct. You want to avoid double counting time. And Jenny Schukabeer piped in. Thank you so much, Jenny. That's right, and she has a good answer there. Count one thing if they're working on the same thing.
So we've had a lot of chats come in through the quiz. If we missed a question that you put into the chat earlier, please go ahead and type it in again so we can make sure to get your questions answered. Trying to go back and make sure we've caught everything, but
yeah, going through all the yeses.
There's a lot in there.
a lot of nopes and nos and ends. Get creative with your responses. Susan asks, when is the next DL course offering? Susan, are you referring to Distance Learning 101, or are you referring to the new online course? If you're referring to Distance Learning 101, that's next year. I'm sure that we'll offer that. We're running DL 102 right now. Oh, she says the new one. That is available as of today. You could go to the site and sign up today, enroll yourself today.
Yeah, that's a self-paced course, online course. Yep. Dave asked, could you see a teacher using TVM lessons very frequently, even daily? Potentially, yes. I know Elizabeth is thinking that that might be the case in her program, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I teach in a context where even before the pandemic, a lot or most of our learners had big barriers to attending synchronous classes regularly. So I am going to be using this a lot myself.
Angela, this is the name of the course, Distance and Blended Learning Basics for Minnesota Adult Education. So when you go to the Literacy Minnesota online training, that's the course you're looking for, and you can enroll yourself if you have an account. And again, if you don't, take 30 seconds, make a free account right there.
And we have the links to get to this course on our final slide, so you'll be able to.
Yes, we do.
Linka asks an important question here. I just want to make sure that everybody is understanding this. Can I submit a whole course or do I have to submit every lesson of the course separately? Again, if you have an entire course, you will not be using this process. If you have an entire course that you'd like to get approved for proxy hours, you're going to go through the teacher created course approval, and Adam's pulling up the visual here for you now.
Yep. TVM over here, complete course over here, and then you'll have to decide how hours are being collected, time on task, or unit completion.
Yeah, and you can find the links to the approval form on that graphic.
Susan asks, whoops, no, it went down already. Do teachers enter the names of each lesson into SID? No. So there's no lesson title entering in SID. The SID class will look, let me pull up SID. It's not there yet because no one's TVM certified. But so here, just like we have distance learning, proxy hours. Again, I don't know how deep I want to go right now, but it will, when you're making a new class, just says people who, when you choose your distance learning platform or distance learning program, it'll be under here, just in the same way that News ELA, Read Theory is. There are the teacher created courses are there. There will be another one called Teacher Verified DL Lesson, and that will be, and then you can put the title of the course that it's connected with, like GED Social Studies Science, TVM, proxy hours, something like that. Okay, we go into detail on how to do this, screenshots, screencasts in the course. So, but no lesson titles will be in SID. Just a place to collect proxy hours.
Abby's got a great suggestion about potentially using the new Mighty Networks networking page as a way for practitioners to find out what lessons people have already created for different topics and share materials. So I think that's a great idea, Abby.
Oh, we could have a TVM certified page.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Thanks, Marisa. Marisa's put in the link to get more information about Mighty Network and how to get signed up. Let's see, we also have a question from Adam Keenel. If I were to develop a lesson on close reading and then assign something like 6-way paragraphs on time reading, we could collect proxy hours for each reading assignment the student completed, right? One lesson, many assignments. Same with teaching listening skills and having students watch multiple TED Talks. So those would each need, if you're going to review them separately and not all learners are going to complete all of those assignments, you're going to want to count each one of those as a separate lesson. Because a reminder, as Elizabeth said, the student either gets all of the proxy hours for that lesson or none of them. There's no partial credit.
Yeah, so it'll be up to you to decide how big of a chunk your lesson will be. 15 minutes to 3 hours, you know, we're guessing most of them will come in somewhere in there, maybe more. Okay, this is your chance, guys. Good questions. Eric asks, can you explain again what happens with all the lessons that a TVM teacher enters into the Google form? So let me just pull up the form real quick. So this is what he's referring to. So again, this form populates a spreadsheet that we could use to potentially get in contact with a teacher. That's really all it is, okay? It's a form to collect details about the lesson. It's not for any other purpose. We're not collecting lessons or materials.
Yes, and you should expect, particularly as we get up and going with this process, our intention is to be doing a much more thorough review of what's coming in to see what kinds of lessons are being used. You can expect that we may be contacting you to ask to see the lessons. We want to make sure that the process is working and people are using it correctly. So particularly during this initial pilot period, we'll be following up with some of the people submitting lessons to take a look at them and provide technical assistance and support if they're not understanding how to use the process correctly.
And Eric, if I'm understanding your question in a different way, if your question is, what does a teacher do with all their lesson materials? Well, that is up to them. They can share with nobody, they can hold on to it, or they can share with colleagues. However, your program, often that's a cultural thing within a program. Do teachers share stuff? Do they not share? How organized are your colleagues with their digital documents? So all that continues to be left up to teachers, colleagues, departments, programs to manage that stuff, just like it is now.
Adam, while we're waiting for any other final questions to come in, do you want to go to our resource slide just to walk people through what they'll have access to?
Yep.
Thanks.
So the course, the link to the course, which I just showed about 2 minutes ago, the New Deal website, which has been shown several times today, the distance learning policies and procedures page, which is a sub page of the website. And then of course our support email, which you can use anytime. Astrid, do you want to tackle Jenny's question that just came in? Or Jenny, you're just kind of saying, let me get back to it.
Yeah. Trying to keep up here. In the case of a site visit audit, when MDE staff see hours given to students for certain lessons, they can look at the list of lessons that have been submitted to make sure they had been submitted. Yes. That's
right. Yeah, thank you, Jenny. It's a double check, right? And we articulate very clearly in the course that the title of the lesson that they include when they fill out that form is the same one that they should record on their lesson log form for that very reason. So we can track down the teacher and the lesson if need be.
Susan's got a great question. Once a lesson is approved, can it be used for an indefinite amount of time? Can it be used again the following year without having to submit another form? Yes.
Yeah, we do have a point in the course which talks about I did the lesson and I want to tweak it, I want to expand it, I want to shrink it. So you can, in that case, if you want to change the proxy hour award, you would do a resubmission, same lesson title, but you'd add the word resubmission to the lesson title. And that would help us tag it in the Excel or search for it in the Excel. So only if you adapted or adjusted the lesson, particularly around the proxy hour requirement. Does a teacher, Eric asks, does a teacher get a record of all the lessons they've submitted for sharing with other TVM teachers so they don't resubmit? No, we have no plan for that. That's an interesting question. I would hope that the teachers would keep a record. I don't know if there's a,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
There is a template provided in the training module that has a space for the teacher to record the date that they submitted the lesson to the Google form. Teachers are not required to use that template, but you can feel free to. And if you create your own template, maybe add a spot to just to document that. So yeah, so you're not having to worry about, did I submit this already?
I can chat to the link to the course. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, I just chatted that.
Oh, you did?
Adam,
Okay.
but could you grab, someone else would like the link on the website to the flowchart?
Yep. I will just, do you want the page it's on or the flowchart itself? Here, I'll do both.
Yeah.
I'll do the flowchart directly, the PDF. And then I'll do the page. Whoops. I think it's under here. All right, what else is coming in? We're
Then
really
we
close
have-
to our end time right about now.
Yep. Okay. One final question I'm seeing. So if Bergen gets a TVM lesson submitted on the form and I'm TVM certified and use her lesson, I don't need to submit a form on the same lesson. Is that right? Correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
And am I only allowed to share my lessons with teachers in the same program or consortium as me at this current time?
You can share with anybody.
And if they're all TVM certified, we can all count those hours for our program.
Guys, great questions.
Yes.
Okay, well, if you have more questions, email us at the support email. Sign up for the course. Enjoy. And our wrap-up time is 3:30 here, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you actually have a couple of minutes left if people have additional questions.
Okay. Yep.
And then I just want to also mention again the certification webinar that is part of the process. I put a link to the Atlas PD calendar where you can find registration information for those. There's also a link within the course where you can link out to the registration for one of the webinars. But just a reminder that you do need to complete the course and all of the course requirements prior to attending that webinar.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. Thanks for your great questions. Thanks for your interest. Thanks to my co-presenters. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been exciting to share this with you all and look forward to working with you over the coming months to refine and further grow the process.
Astrid and Adam, we had a question from Darcy.
Okay.
If I use a system for teaching a content area like vocabulary words, do I need to submit a new request for each chapter? So her example is, I always teach vocabulary words in the same way with a video and a graphic organizer that is corrected by me. So for each new chunk of new set of vocab, do I have to resubmit?
Resubmit? Is that the question on the table?
Or submit a new, submit the form for each vocab list if I'm doing it the same way every time.
Well, that's the chunking question. You're right. It's up to them. I think that's on them to decide how much they want to assign to a learner. It's going to be this balance between filling out the form and assigning not too much, not too little. So I think that's going to be left up to the teacher to decide. I don't know without seeing it, it's going to be hard to give a recommendation, I think, right?
Yeah, and you also may want to, depending on how you're delivering that instruction, if you're teaching a vocabulary course, it may make more sense to bundle it into a course if that's the way you're teaching it. But if you're ad hoc,
This is
then you
Eric.
don't
I
wanna
don't
do it.
think that's, I think the question is, let's say every Monday you do 5 new vocabulary words and you do exactly the same process. Do you have to submit a new lesson form for each Monday lesson? Or if it's the same thing, but just 5 different words each Monday, can you just submit
Oh,
once?
right. That's a great question.
But is it necessarily the same? Because I teach 3 new words every week, and I go back and forth between maybe 10 different activities. We don't do the same activities every week. That's a good question, and I'd like to know too.
I don't know how to answer it right now.
Some teachers do. And so if they are teaching the same, using the same vocabulary, using the vocabulary example, if every week or every chapter I present, practice, assess, all of that in the same way for every chapter, do I need to submit each chapter? Or can I submit one and say, this is how it's done, and that's approved for all of them, as long as I'm doing it in the same way?
So the question is, can you get the process certified, not so much the individual?
Right.
Well, she's going to be certified.
Yeah, right.
That's a great question we have not thought about.
Yeah, it's a
That is
good
a really
question.
good question.
I think initially my response would be, yes, you do need to submit for each one. And if you're, I mean, Heather, thinking about a large program like yours, that this is something where if it's material that's really being used across multiple classes and teachers, people could collaborate to get that work done. But I think we would want a record of everything. Brad, you're on with us. Would you agree? Would you want to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, thanks, Astrid. I agree. I think at least initially, as we're trying to pilot, you would want to fill out that form each time you're assigning that a new lesson. And then for auditing purposes, it would be recorded as a separate lesson. I think in an audit with the feds, for example, they would get a little, their eyebrows would raise if they saw that you were giving the exact same lesson and the student was getting the exact same hour every week for the same lesson. Like that might raise questions in an audit. As if it were kind of vocab, if it had a slightly different label and was a different lesson title, that would pass more quickly in a federal audit.
And just to be clear, this is work that's done by the learner independently and asynchronously. This is not what's happening during the class. Okay, yeah. Another way to think about it too, maybe you could potentially, like if the chunk is really small, but you still want to capture the hours, you could potentially do something like a unit, vocabulary unit, but then you risk, so let's say over the month it's 5 hours. I don't know, I'm making this up. It would be 5 hours worth of work. But then because you got a rotating cast of people who show up to do the work, don't do the work, don't complete all of it, you risk not being able to collect any hours for the students who complete 3 out of the 5 chunks. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be that balance. Like you either submit it in a small chunk and you have to use the form again, or you submit it in a larger chunk and you risk not being able to collect proxy hours for stuff that's not complete. Am I articulating that okay? Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
And can
Does it make sense to you, Heather?
We could probably stop the recording now too. If we
Yeah.
want to.
Can I ask you
Okay,
also to
will
follow
do.
up on
Thank you.
Heather's question? Because I'm interested as well, just to make sure I understand when she asked if a lesson has been submitted by a TVM certified teacher, can it be used by a teacher who's not TVM certified for proxy hours? The teacher can use it, right? The non-certified teacher, but the non-certified teacher can or can't collect.
Cannot.
Cannot.
Okay. All right, thank you. I wanted to make sure because I needed that answer too.